our governor was, in my humble opinion, was actually tracking for the White House. I actually thought he was going to be the next president, but he decided to step in it in the worst way possible. And I hope, against all hope, that his decision, it goes two ways. Number one, he decides to pass the 6-week abortion ban, and then almost universally, and I'm sure you guys noticed this, almost the entire Florida delegation endorsed Trump almost immediately after that, because they got internal polling that said this was a bridge too far and this is going to eat you alive, especially on the national stage. In Florida, there's a lot of stuff you can get away with on the national stage. You can't do that. And so now it looks like maybe we have a shot at this. How do you guys see it in terms of numbers right now? And do you agree that this can be the ultimate lesson for the rest of the nation, that the governor, who looked like he definitely had some serious presidential credentials lining up for himself, completely threw it away by passing this 6-week abortion ban?
Yeah, I mean, let's paint the scene, right? I mean, you have a very extreme piece of policy that, as you noted, majority of Americans and Floridians oppose, passed by a Republican supermajority with about 7 Republicans voting no. So it had bipartisan opposition. And the governor he receives this bill at around 10 o'clock at night, signs it at 11 p.m. at a closed door private ceremony with hand-picked attendees. Mm-hmm. And that alone tells us that he signed this in an effort to appeal to his conservative base. But he's also attempting to hide it from the public. Now, it's very hard to hide a 6-week abortion ban, especially when it goes into effect, because you're going to see the chaos that it creates with people having appointments canceled, people having to travel out of state to access an abortion, people pausing pregnancies for fear of being unable to safely deliver in Florida, and so forth. And I do think that it's not just about DeSantis; it's also about members of the legislature who went along with this and voted yes, and will face consequences at the ballot box. And I've actually spoken to Republican colleagues, off the record, who have told me this is a really bad vote. These are some really stupid bills, and it's going to hurt us. And the ballot initiative is the first time in a long time we've ever had a proactive measure in Florida on abortion access, which is very exciting because usually we're playing defense, right? Even in 2012. Yeah, even 2012 with the Vote No on 6 campaign, that was another defensive, we won that initiative, but it was another defensive tactic and campaign. So I think the fact that we can highlight people's voting record will be important, including the governor, but then also, reroute that energy towards the ballot box in such a very explicit, direct way is going to be powerful and transformational in helping people be able to access care again, but of course, holding people accountable for their track record. So I definitely agree. And, DeSantis is also just a really weird dude. And I feel like that's becoming nationally, clear. So he's not doing himself any favors, but yeah, I mean, he's winning a national race, with that record. It definitely sets him up for failure.
I wanted to ask you something, Representative Gantt, and we were talking a little bit before about when we have to appeal to different demographics, okay, regarding the issue of abortion. And something that I came across and still continue to come across from a lot of people that I've met from campaigning and just canvassing in general is there is definitely not the same level of enthusiasm for pro-choice in the Black community that there is in, let's say, just your middle America white community. And there is something to that. There is something there. And I've made some good friends along the way. And I do have a general understanding of it. But yet we still have to get this message out to people. And I think that it is somewhat challenging. I was wondering what your experience has been in South Florida, because for me, that's the community where we were canvassing. I can't speak as to all communities, regardless. But yeah, there was, and I remember there was a race where Representative Omfroy, and we had talked with her about this because this had come up. I forget who it was running against her. Who was it? Was it Omari?
No, it was Jasmine Rogers Show.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. About the choice issue. And the neighborhood wasn't with it. they just weren't with it. So I just was wondering what your experience has been with that and what we need to do.
Well, when you talk about South Florida, we have a diverse Black community, right? So it's comprised of the diaspora. So you have the Caribbean, you have Africans, you have Black Americans. And so when you talk about a consensus, you have to think about, well, what demographic of the Black community are you specifically talking about in that particular area? But if we want to generalize it as a whole, we have to go back in history, right? We have to go back to gynecological studies. Like the practice of gynecology started with experimenting on enslaved Black women and the notion that Black women don't experience pain the same as white women, and they didn't get any type of anesthesia when these procedures were being performed. And so we have this body of work of medicine that was derived or created from barbarity against the bodies of Black women who were not, Black people at that time, and especially Black women, were not in control of our bodily sovereignty. So you have that distrust with the medical community or the medical field within the Black community that goes back to enslavement. And if we want to be accurate with our vocabulary, human trafficking and kidnapping. And it was a barbaric system. And so over the years, you see in the medical profession, it has continued, it has evolved. That feeling, the experiences of racism has evolved, because right now, today in 2023, with our medical advances, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth or childbirth complications still. And it doesn't matter the socioeconomic status, because Serena Williams got a blood clot and the doctors didn't even believe her, and she could have died. Tori Bowie, which is a U.S. Olympian, she just died from complications of carrying a child. And so it is a very nuanced conversation. And when we talk about abortion care, we look at the history of Planned Parenthood. And I believe Planned Parenthood does great work in all communities now, right? But you still have to look back at that history and the rhetoric and the stories and the continued narrative that's being told, or that still is alive and well. And like, we carry it as a cloak in the Black community. And we have to have the history coupled with what we see now in the medical field. And then we also have to talk about intersectionality when we talk about women issues. We have to talk about, yes, white women can be very racist against Black women, and we're still very much women. And we have the same type of issues with misogyny and sexism, and then you add on that layer of racism. And so that conversation needs to be really talked about, transparent, open, and in a vulnerable way, to say, like, these are the issues. This is why Black women often feel silenced in the conversation when it's about abortion care, reproductive care, because we don't get the allyship of saying, yeah, there is racism in medical school. There is racism in the medical field that requires me as a childless woman right now to say, I need you to document this in my record, because I asked for it and you're blowing me off. And I had to do that. Like, I've left my yearly exams in tears because of the insensitive comments that were made by doctors that are supposed to have my best interest at heart. So it is a very nuanced issue. And when we talk about, you know, the abortion care in the community, traditionally Black people have been very conservative. We have our babies, you know, and not always to the benefit of the woman who's carrying a baby, but that's been our just what we do, right? And that does also have like the ghost of slavery in it as well. But even before that, you know, when we talk about just communities in Africa and the lasting family ties that goes to that, like, it's such a nuanced conversation. But now, like, I was very transparent in my very Black district. I'm running because this man voted for the 15-week abortion care. And I said that to elders who are older than my grandparents would have been if they were still here, who are my mom's age, my age, and younger. And everybody understands that one key thing of the history of not having bodily sovereignty in our community. And that's where I related to them. Like, the government is where is it going to end? Where is it going to end? Are they now going to tell me, like, we're still fighting for my natural hair to be able to be accepted in professional environments in Florida, to be, quite frank. So where is it going to end when the government tells or takes away and strips away our bodily autonomy? And that is how I have been able to broach that subject with a Black man that's 75 years old. That's just like, the deacon at the church. And he understands that.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.